I have a fondness for Gregorian chant. I was raised Catholic, and that stuck with me. I had an uncle who was an Episcopal priest too, and our visits there, and they did music quite well in that church, and I think it grew from there.
What was your earliest memory, musical memory?
Oh, well, one Christmas I was given a bunch of pseudo instruments / noisemakers, and I drove everybody to extreme distraction with those. But my first was in grade school, and they started a band program, and I was playing trumpet. And then into high school, I went to French horn. I also wanted to play in the jazz band, so I picked up some electric bass. Then when I went to college, I was a horn major originally, and I was lousy. I wasn't a very good horn player. I had amateur problems, and they were almost insurmountable amateur problems. So in my second year of college, I had to declare another major instrument. So I had to go from basically what they call beginner level on the upright bass to college entrance level. So that was a year in the practice rooms. And I did it. Bullish determination, just plain stubbornness. But I had a very good teacher, Tyler Amm. I went to St. Rita High School on the south side of Chicago. I was in the band, which was as time consuming as probably boot camp, because I thought in my first year, oh gosh, we're done with football season. Our team won city champs, which they would go on for the next 3 years after that to win. We had a couple guys, Dennis Slick, who was on the Chicago Bears, was on that team, and it was a great team. But we marched all those games, and we marched parades. And when football season ended, I thought, we can relax. No, we marched basketball games.
You marched?
We would do a halftime show on the court.
Oh, big time.
And we would do Globetrotter games, So it was very active initiation. Then I did my undergrad work at Western Illinois University. And what a lot of people don't understand about Western is that it was really kind of a jewel at the time. It could be well today, but I haven't followed up. Our staff, or their staff, was composed of Juilliard, Eastman, and Curtis Institute graduates.
And what years did you go through?
It was 1973 to 78. 5 years, because I took the year on the instrument. For example, Jerry Carey, he played for Frederick Fennell at Eastman. These were people who had their CVs were extensive, and so you got to study with those people right away. The choral side, a fellow named Bob Hills was quite well known, was there. So, there were a lot of top-notch people that you would see. If you went to some other larger university, you might not, as an education major, might not have gotten to study with some of these people, or not until your maybe senior year. Here it was day one. And it was fascinating looking back at some of the things that I picked up, some of the things I saw. We were doing the Verdi Requiem one time. Which tells you something right there, what we were able to do repertoire-wise. And there's a segment where it's just the male voices singing, and the bassoon professor, Dr. Cooper, was sitting right next to the bass section. and he's singing in a rehearsal. He's singing along, but he's singing in solfege. And I said, when was the last time you did that? He said, oh, I did that back when I was at Eastman 20 years ago. Okay, all right, thank you very much. After that, I did my graduate work at Illinois State.
And when was that? Right?
Oh, it started when I was here in Ottawa, 1980, 79 or 80. And that was partially, my studies there were motivated by my move into the choral program here. After that, continuing education, I did almost a full bachelor's in hours at Vanderbilt College of Music. And I actually thought that my experiences there were extremely formative because it was all activity driven. So you wouldn't talk theory, you did it right then and there. And you would be put in a zone where you normally wouldn't, like you walk in a room, here's a banjo. Okay, here's how we're going to do this. And you do it. And you do it for a week, 8 hours a day, with other people who are in a similar situation. Nobody's on their major instrument in this case. And you walk out and your mind is expanded from the experience. Oh, well, I could play almost any band instrument, any string instrument. When I retired, I started classical guitar because I needed to have a challenge. And that was interesting because a whole different set of problems for the hands. And using like this third finger here, you normally, as a bass player, for just upright bass, you're not using that a lot. So there'd be times when I just have to move it, even though I'm telling my finger to move, training that. A banjo, I picked up banjo because in Naperville, we did bluegrass strings as a group. And so, you had to teach fiddling, country slap bass, or folk music, because we did Celtic, we did Eastern European, so you had to pick up some of those instruments. But you walk in a room and you have a 5-string banjo, and the kids look at it and they go, for a lot of kids, believe it or not, they go, what the heck is that? And, here, try this. That's part of what we're about. Well, the first I had heard about it was from John Upstrom, because John and I went to Western together. I had the same teacher. And John came back, visited the campus, and was talking about his experiences. And then when I graduated, I had done several interviews in other areas. And normally, or it seemed that way for me in that experience, I'd be interviewing for an orchestra job, and then they'd also say, but can you help with the marching band? And that was anathema to me. I had done 4 years in high school and a year in college in marching band. Some people love it. I was running, screaming the other way. So when I came here, nobody mentioned doing marching band, which I felt was a lovely thing. But I interviewed here, was for strings, doing the orchestra gig, string techniques class, music appreciation, music theory. Okay, and that's what I started with. And that was, I loved it. When I first came here, I loved the town. If you remember, if you go up to the teacher's lounge in the high school and you look out on the confluence of the rivers and that, boy, that's an addictive place. You just sit there and look. And you could just, if you had to get in a Zen place, that was it. Because it's just beautiful. And there were a lot of interesting quirks. At the time, was the beginning of a Laotian community here in town. And during the spring, there'd be Laotian women with nets on the 50-yard line of the football field because it had flooded. And so they were fishing off the football field. You don't see that every day, you know. You go out for a pike or a cod. Anyway, there were a lot of things about the town I just thought were very nice. Unfortunately, there were a lot of other things going on at that time economically in the country that hit Ottawa, hit the industry side of Ottawa. And there were closures of various industries and people not with jobs. And that got to be, you know, you could feel the stress of that. And in this high school, and also we lost student body because people were leaving town. And it wasn't a little bit, it was, you could see it drop. But we lost enough kids that, you know, there was a reduction in force was put in place. And it became a situation where everybody was concerned about their future. And the insidious thing about that is you could be friends with other, you know, colleagues, and then all of a sudden, you know, it strikes at the unity because you're not sure where your job is going to be. And we saw some of that in the music department. When John Upstrom left, I'm walking down the hallway one day, and the principal at the time, Mr. Johnson, walks up to me, and you know, I'm in my own happy place thinking about something, and he walks up and he says, "Could you do choral?" And I said, well, "I think I can," which was the worst sentence I ever said. It really demanded a yes or no answer, and I was in the middle. And he repeated that, and some people didn't like that I think I can. There are a lot of different people fighting for different kind of turf and had different ideas of what the department should be. That happens. But what happened to me at that moment when he asked this, all of a sudden, I'm getting married that summer. My wife had quit her job in Hinsdale. They had hired her replacement already, so there was no take-backs. And so I felt I was kind of in a corner. The next 2 years were tough because I was not in my comfort zone.
Because you were asked to do the choir at that time.
I was not only asked to do the choir, I had found out, a birdie told me that there was going to be a board meeting. This, I think it was a week before I got married. There was going to be a board meeting. It was going to be about the music department. What? You know, I go to this thing, and all of a sudden I'm being asked, well, can you do this job or not? And I'm sitting there going, okay, I'm getting married in a week. She doesn't have a job. It probably wouldn't go over well with the new in-laws that I don't have a job. You know, so I said, yeah, I could do it. And so, you know, that kind of sculpted the next 2 years. But I was increasingly dissatisfied with how things were going. You know, what I originally showed up there for, it all of a sudden morphed into something completely different. And when the Naperville opening happened, it was a 1-year opening. And I said, yeah, I just need to get back and do strings again. And so I applied for the job, and I was given it. And not only that, as we were at the central office in Naperville, they asked my wife, what she had done, and she had told them, and they offered her a job teaching general music. And it was too good to pass up. A lot about myself in those first 3 years, and I learned that, maybe this was not my level of water, because it wasn't comfortable. And I found that being with 4th and 5th graders in junior high was comfortable. My first year, never been to contests before. I think it was in Geneseo. And we were the first orchestra of that day to play. And I believe we did an arrangement of one of the Mozart Overture de Impresario by Mozart. And we played, did our performance. At the end of the day, we were looking at scores. Our orchestra got a 1. There were 4 orchestras that day. The next one got a 2. The next one got a 3. The next one got a 4. And I'm thinking, oh my! I felt horrible for it. You don't want to go home with a 3 and 4. I mean, and I thought, whew, well, wow, that was a good day. But I never really got to feel good with the contest thing. Even I would put them out, and try. I was made sure that what went out was the best that could go out. And then when I walked into the chorus, I was able to take the orchestra stuff and bring that in too. The guy who did the chorus at Marquette and I were good friends. I said, we really should do something. Bring people together and have these kids meet these kids and do a performance. And we brought, for the orchestra, we brought people from the community in to play. And I think it was a nice attempt. My wife was hired on to do some of the choral activities. The one, I believe it was this, the 6th grade girl, or not 6th grade, Arthur, freshman girls chorus, and she did the swing choir. Because as I've told you, you would not have wanted to see a string choir or a swing choir from my efforts. It would have been ludicrous at the best, at the least, and bizarre at the best. But
so you and Karen pretty much worked as a team while you...
Yeah. My first year as a string teacher, I was at a junior high and 5 elementaries. Okay. I could have qualified to be a cab driver after that year because I knew my way around town. I also had the great fortune of working for some principals, old school guys. Some of them World War II combat vets. They knew what was a big thing and what was a little thing. And I had a string of principals that would walk into your room and tell you when something wasn't quite up to snuff. They'd tell you that. And you listened and you learned. You didn't do that again. They also would come in the room and say, I really liked how you did that. Pat you on the back. Which is the greatest thing in the world. You get so much dividends off of that if you're a school principal. And so that was invaluable. My first year of strings, that person came back that I had been filling in for. But then I was moved over to band. And I was in the band, elementary band program, junior high, for 9 years. And I would go and build elementary bands. I had some years 3 schools, some years 2. And I would have like 110, 120 kids in each band in an elementary, which was great, except for Memorial Day, when you marched all those kids, and I had 220 kids at the high school parking lot, and it was like herding cats. After that time, I went on and moved to the junior high level. I had junior high and elementary. I was doing at one elementary school, I was doing the whole schmear, both band and orchestra. And I remained at with 3 schools for the rest of the time there. But the junior high school I was at housed the gifted program. And I used that because one person's thought of what comprises gifted is different from another person's. But we had a couple of class buildings outside of the main building where that program, where they had their regular classes. They come in the building for electives and PE and lunch. And the majority of my students were from that program at that school, and most have been playing string instruments since they were in the womb. So I ended up with a junior high orchestra program, doing music that I had no right as a junior high orchestra program to do. But I'm having kids that are walking in that can play the Bach double violin concerto, and they're 6th grade. And that was for almost 20 years. You know, so I had 3 orchestras. I had a chamber orchestra, a select group chamber orchestra, and I had what we called at the time bluegrass strings. Well, I retired 7 years ago. Both my wife and I did, because the school district made us an offer we couldn't refuse. You know, and we were coming to an end of contract, and we had our the 34 years in, and it just seemed okay. If the good Lord is willing to give you time, take that time. You can still substitute. You can still do, if you don't, in the line that you had previously doing, or you could do something completely different.